Chapter 4: The Burden of Truth. John Anderson's life had become a whirlwind of chaos and emotion. The more he used his gift, the more people sought him out, each with their own desperate need for his help. The intensity of the visions continued to grow, and with it, the emotional and physical toll on John. He knew he was reaching a breaking point, but he was determined to help as many people as he could, driven by the divine purpose he felt within him. One evening, as John was preparing to leave the community center, he was approached by a man named Robert. His face was etched with worry, and his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "John, I need your help. My daughter, Emily, has been missing for 3 days. The police have no leads, and I'm terrified something terrible has happened. Please, can you help me?" John felt a pang of sympathy and agreed to help. He placed his hand on Robert's shoulder, closing his eyes and focusing on the connection. Almost instantly, a vision flooded his mind. He saw Emily running through a dense forest, her face streaked with tears. She looked frightened and determined, as if she was trying to escape something or someone. John could feel her fear and desperation, and he knew they had to act quickly. "She's alive, Robert. She's in a forest, running away from something." Robert's eyes widened with a mix of hope and fear. "Do you know where she is?" John shook his head. "Not exactly, but I saw a few details that might help. There's a forest near the edge of town that matches what I saw. We should start there." Without wasting any time, John and Robert drove to the outskirts of town. The area was desolate, with tall trees and thick underbrush. They parked near the entrance and quickly made their way into the forest. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, but John pushed forward, his heart pounding with determination. As they searched the forest, John's visions grew stronger, guiding him through the maze of trees and undergrowth. Finally, they reached a small clearing. John could feel Emily's presence nearby. "She's here," he whispered, motioning for Robert to stay back. He took a deep breath and stepped into the clearing. Inside, they found Emily, sitting on a fallen log, her face buried in her hands. Her eyes widened in shock and relief as she saw her father and John. Robert rushed forward, tears streaming down his face as he pulled his daughter into a tight embrace. "Emily, thank God you're safe," Robert said, his voice choked with emotion. Emily looked up at John, her eyes filled with gratitude and fear. "Thank you for finding me. I was so scared and so lost. I just went for a simple hike and got so turned around. It was getting dark and I kept hearing growling sounds, so I ran until I couldn't run anymore. I didn't think I would survive." John nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "I'm just glad you're safe. Let's get you home." As they made their way back to the car, John couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His visions were becoming more intense and unpredictable, and he feared that he was losing control. He knew he needed to take a step back and reassess his situation, but there were still so many people who needed his help. That night, as John lay in bed, he prayed for guidance. "Lord, please give me strength. I'm struggling to carry this burden, and I need your help to continue. I am feeling overwhelmed with the task before me." The next morning, John received a call from a woman named Lisa. Her voice was frantic as she explained that her husband, Mark, had gone missing. He had left for a rock climbing trip the previous day and never returned. The police had found his car parked at the trailhead, but there was no sign of him. "Please, John, can you help me? I don't know what else to do." John agreed to meet her and see if his gift could provide any answers. When he arrived at Lisa's home, he found her pacing nervously, her eyes red from crying. She handed him a photo of Mark, and as their hands touched, John was hit with another vision. He saw Mark lying at the base of a cliff, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle and his face bruised and bloodied. The rocky terrain was treacherous, and the sun was beginning to set. John could feel Mark's pain and desperation, and he knew they had to act quickly. "Lisa, I saw him. He's injured and alone at the base of a cliff. We need to go now." Lisa's face paled, but she nodded, grabbing her coat and keys. There's a popular climbing spot near the river on the outskirts of town. That must be where he is. They drove in silence, the tension in the car palpable. When they arrived at the trailhead, John led the way, his visions guiding him through the rugged terrain. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the base of the cliff where Mark was lying. John and Lisa worked together to stabilize Mark, carefully checking his injuries. Mark's eyes fluttered open, and he looked up at them in confusion, his voice weak. "What happened? How did you find me? Where's Adam?" John looked puzzled at the mention of Adam, but when he looked around he saw Adam's still body barely visible behind some boulders. Adam had lost his grip and Mark was pulled off with him when his gear failed to support them both in the fall. Lisa hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "John found you. He saved you." As they helped Mark back to the car and called the police about Adam, John couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in his chest. His visions were becoming more intense, and the physical and emotional toll was growing. He knew he couldn't continue like this much longer. That night, John prayed again. "Lord, I am so weary. Please help me." As he drifted off to sleep, John felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had a strange sense that the end of his journey was near. To be continued in Chapter 5.